Hi, I'm David Picó from the Departamento de Sistemes Informàtics y Computació. In this unit, we are going to talk about the principle of good shape. And this is a principle of perception that comes from Gestalt psychology. It's a principle that helps us understand some particular way in which the human perception system perceives things. We're going to see how to apply this to web design. Okay. The principle of good shape can be seen on figure A here in this slide. Take a look to the first image named A. Here, if we take a look to that, most people, when you see that, you understand that there are two different shapes involved. The way most of us see this is the way it's displayed in figure B. See that most of us see two elements. We see a straight line, horizontal straight line, and we see a curved, curly line going this way. Okay, this is what we do, most of us. There are other options. Another option could be, as shown in figure C, that we would understand that there are two elements involved. One of them is a straight line going curved downwards, and the symmetrical part, as in C, or we can think that there is a straight line followed by a curved line going upwards, and then the symmetrical form, as in D. I mean, there is no reason, there is no reason, let's say that way, for choosing B as the interpretation. Okay, the principle of good shape, what Gestalt psychologists said about this, is that in this figure, we tend to perceive a straight line and a curved line just because these are shapes that we are used to. We know these shapes. It's a much better known shape, a straight line or a curved line, than this combination of straight and curved. So, since for us it's easier to understand that these are the two elements, then that's what we do. So, the principle of good shape says that when a figure is ambiguous, we tend to assimilate the elements to already known shapes. That's the idea. So the implications, we're going to see now some little examples of how this can help us understand web design better. The implications are different. First, the human perception system has a tendency to perceive previously perceived shapes. So when we see, as I said, when we see an ambiguous shape, we tend to understand it in terms of something which is already known. Okay? So one of the implications is that unknown shapes produce surprise. Okay? Known shapes usually produce a feeling of security, and unknown shapes produce surprise. That's something that we have to take into account when we design a website, because a website has very many shapes, and everywhere there are different ways. Shapes, I mean, by shapes I mean here graphical shapes, but also the way in which contents are organized. That's also a shape. So we have to graduate how much surprise we want to produce and when. For example, one of the ways of thinking about this is that there are some standards in web design that are de facto standards. This means that some standards that have become known just because they're used. I mean, there is no regulation about that, but just the use. It has been used. Okay? So let's see some examples. In web design, it is a standard to see links as a text which is underlined and in blue. Okay, this is something which happens very often, and readers in a website are used to see that. Okay, another standard may be a logo in the upper leftmost corner. So an image in that corner is usually maybe a logo very often, and very often it links to the home page. That's another de facto standard. Another one is that we can have, we usually, the structure of a home page very often, the structure of a website is a home page and some hierarchical structure in sections and subsections, which is shown using a menu. That's very common as well. And also another standard might be that if we are using a vertical menu, this vertical menu is usually displayed on the left of the page. That's very common as well, especially in languages such as English. Okay, in English websites, that's usually the case. Okay. What happens if we break these standards? We have to be very clever if we do that, because if we don't do a very good design that helps the user understand what is going on, then there might be a very big confusion. For example, imagine what happens if we have a text which is underlined and it is not a link. If that happens, you probably can think of examples. It's very probable that you will have the user trying to go there with a cursor and try to click and see if it's a link or not. Okay, because the user sees that, and the good shape, the standard is that should be a link. Okay, what happens if we see a website with a picture on the left? On the upper left corner, which is not a logo, or which has a link, and that link points somewhere else. It doesn't point to the home page. Okay, again, probably that would be very confusing. Or think of a website that has no home page. The structure is different, and there is no home page and there is no menu. Okay, probably that can be also a very confusing page. Last, imagine what happens if we have a vertical menu on the right part of the page. Again, you have to do a very good design. If you want to do that, you have to design the page very carefully so that the person will understand that that is a menu for the whole page, if that's the case. If not, it's very easy that the user thinks that, for example, that menu is a banner or some other kind of non-important information. Okay, this following the standards, and I was talking about before about the need for the designer of graduating how much we want to follow standards or not. If we follow standards, we end up having a classical page. A classical in the sense that it's a page that won't give you any surprise because everything is known and the shapes produce a sense of security and easiness of use. Nothing happens that is unexpected. However, if we want to make the user feel surprised and shocked or maybe excited somehow, maybe we want to do the opposite. We want to break the standards, some standards, so that the user will have a striking feeling. Okay, there will be a surprise because things won't be working as the user expects. Let's see an example. This is a classical design of a brand of clothes, and I say this is a classical design because here there is no element for making you feel surprised. There is a perfect line closing the design. So there is a frame that contains the image. That's something very standard. There are two menus. One is vertical, which is about what is going on here, and you have a clear idea that that is that way because you have the frame. And then there is a bar here separated in two sections. There's a different menu talking about the shop itself, which is not about the collection, but about the shop, which is outside in a different color. So it's a very clear separation. And there are straight lines. And here we have the collection for men with small thumbnail pictures, which is something very, very common. And you can click on them and see the picture in big. And when you click on one of them, you know what you will see. So everything is quite well known all the time. See another example of another brand for clothes, which they want to give you a different feeling. Here, for example, there are no limits. I mean, I cut the image, but there is no end for this black. The end is the browser's window. And if you see this in action, this is animated. And here, for this section, you have these pictures. When you move your mouse, usually one of them, the one you have your mouse over, is shining. And you don't know what will happen. When you click here, you go to some part of the collection and you can see some things, but you won't know what will be happening. See that, for example, this decoration, this circle, is also breaking the limits. It's overlapping with the text and with the pictures. That's something which is not a good shape. It's not something too common. And the menus are in the same column, and the differences between this menu and some part of this menu and this menu are differences in the size of the letters and sometimes the color of some parts, which is also something which is not too common. It's not as clear as in the previous example. So here, this is it's not tremendously striking, but it's a slightly more unusual design. Okay, so it gives you a different feeling as a user. Okay, as a summary, designers must be aware. This principle, the principle of good shape, helps you be aware of when you are following standards and when you are breaking standards. So that's something that the designer must always know to see and do on purpose. Okay, breaking the standards, something that may be desirable sometimes, but can also be confusing. So you have to be very careful when you design breaking any standard. This dimension between classical and striking and breaking standards has to be adjusted to the purposes of the site. Depending on the goals and the audience you're addressing to, you should do a classical or a striking design. For example, if you were going to design for an official government site, you usually want to do a very classical thing that produces no surprise, for example. And if you want to make a design for a commercial for some soda drink, which is for teenagers, you want to do something more that produces unexpected behavior. So something that designers have to graduate. Okay, that's everything. Thank you very much for your attention.